Okay, I hit record. Does that mean I'm recording? Yeah.
Yes, we are recording.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, now we have to say things because we're recording. I'm not very good with this
Yeah.
talking under pressure thing.
I'm so freaked out. First of all, I feel like I've been very isolated lately, like not talking to a lot of people in general.
Yeah,
So
me too.
my social skills are like depleted at the moment. And just talking about my personal life is not something I do a lot, which is weird because
Wow.
I write about it a lot. And I'm very concerned with myself and my experiences, but I don't really like talk about them. So
Yeah, I can definitely relate to both of those. I have this really bad habit of just retreating into my head and retreating into my little interest bubble and just
yeah,
spending the whole evening reading and these types of things instead of interacting with people. Um,
yeah,
it's just like you get so carried away by the things you're passionate about and your interests and what you're pursuing intellectually that most of your life starts to happen inside of your head.
yeah, honestly. And
I
yeah,
don't know if that's your own experience, but it sometimes it's like there's stretches of my life where like it's completely cerebral. Like I don't even remember it because everything that was important to me happened inside of my brain. I
yeah,
don't know if that happens to you.
I kind of feel like that about my whole life, which is why I like the idea of talking about my life is like, can I even tell that story to myself in a coherent way, like in a way that would make sense to someone externally, because I've just been like running through it all in my own head. I've never even until recently started to think about what it looks like from a different perspective. With Ben and I kind of talking about my life, it's like, oh, okay, that's a different way to look at my upbringing. That
Mm.
was actually really challenging, and I never really admitted to myself how challenging it was. But yeah, yeah, it's definitely relate to the living in your head.
Yeah, I don't know. There are stretches where I'll get out of it to and start engaging with people more. I have stretches of that, but I find myself falling back into the same pattern where I um, like right now I'm in this particularly um, inside my own head
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of space, but um, I think a few months ago I was less so. I'm always sort of becoming aware of it and then sort of challenging myself in that degree, and then getting back in the same old. And yeah,
yeah,
it's a
yeah. I go through phases with it too. Like, I think you get used to whatever you're doing. Like, it's if I get in this pattern of just coming home after work, staying in, being with myself, then that becomes what I do for a while. And then if I shift into a mode where well, when I was going out a lot, I used to go out and like drink and hang out with people a lot. And so I would get in the pattern of doing that all the time. And that,
yep, yeah.
but lately,
And for me, like there's this story I would sometimes tell myself where like this stuff I'm pursuing intellectually within my own head with my reading and whatever, this is what matters. And spending time with my friends and whatever, that's just that's not as important. So I've I've been really challenging that whole narrative as well.
yeah,
And
I,
now it's like eh, we've been having this conversation about rituals. For me, just getting outside to spend time with people in a weird way is becoming a ritual,
yeah,
which is I don't quite like how that pans out because it's like it should be something you're doing spontaneously instead of sort of trying to create time in your schedule for it.
yeah. I don't know. You kind of have to, though, in a sense. Like, I don't know. I feel like for me, I think I'm getting to the place where I need to make more of an intentional effort to do that. And yeah, I think I've just been like really genuinely selfish, where I don't
Hmm.
I don't maintain my friendships really well at all, and like I hate
Yep.
being
Hmm.
accountable to other people. I hate like I'm just really
Yep.
communicating with friends, and yeah.
Yeah, I can relate. I can relate. Here's another thing. Like so I have this. One of my interests is, well, it's not an interest, but one of the things I'm aware of is the negative side of technology, and
Mhm.
how like you can get sucked into your phone, and how that can be very negative in one way. So one thing I was trying to figure out was how to have a more healthy relationship with that.
Mhm.
And one thing I did as a sort of, maybe as an experiment or something, is I switched my smartphone to a flip phone, and like deleted all my social media accounts, and then sort of completely cut myself off essentially from my friends. We're
Yeah.
like, and I was just telling myself this story, it's not that important that I'm keeping in touch with them with texting. I can just, have this face to face conversation and
Mhm.
talk over the phone. But yeah, it's, it gets, yeah, I think there needs to be a balance there too. So,
Exactly. Yeah, we've gone through the trying to deal with the amount of time that we spend on our phones or on social media too. We've talked about doing the flip phone thing. I have deleted I think all the social media apps from apart from Discord now, which is now the new thing. Really not, but like I deleted Facebook, I deactivated my Instagram,
yeah,
and that has been really great for me because I just like had some unhealthy habits with those things where I'm just
yeah, yeah.
scrolling for no reason, looking at stuff that I know is going to make me feel bad about myself for whatever weird little reasons, and um, yeah, Ben's been really good about being like, why don't you just delete Instagram if Instagram makes you feel like crap? I'm like, oh, I guess I could do that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a big, just deleting my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook. Those were all things that really opened up like new time
Mhm.
to pursue more meaningful stuff. It's such an attention suck, and you weren't getting anything meaningful out of it.
Yeah,
So,
it's painful to think about the amount of hours I spent just like
mm,
it really just sucks you into this mental space that's not nice when you're just
mhm.
like not connected to your body or the world or anything.
Oh yeah, the long term view. People always say like, "Will you regret the time you spent doing X when you're older?" This is always something that's kind of devastating for me. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. Well, we're trying to change those habits and figure stuff out now, so that's good.
One Here's one thing about the meaning crisis that sort of strikes me is just how, um, and I think this connects to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about over Discord and whatever, is one big aspect of the meaning crisis is just how, um, what's the word? People feel paralyzed by the the things that matter in life. Like it's almost like we find ourselves sucked into these sort of rhythmic patterns of just going through the routine and never getting outside of your comfort zone to where real life actually is. Like we were talking about, um, you know, me going home in my comfort zone to read my books, and you going into your little headspace, and just falling into this rhythm where you just don't get out of it to get to the spaces in life that actually matter.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, there's so much about how we live that is just not intentional, and yeah, you just fall into patterns.
And
Yeah, or
and even the whole fact that you have to be intentional about it, that seems strange,
yeah,
because uh, I wonder if people used to not have to be as intentional. It was like they they just lived life. Maybe I'm just like having this delusional view of things in the past, but it seems like we, yeah, people today have like a much harder time
Yeah.
getting out of this paralysis, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if that has to do with, like, I just feel, well, depending on how you were raised, but I was raised with no sort of real framework for life at all. Like, no religious backbone to my life.
Mm.
Like,
Hey.
you can be whatever you want to be. You can, basically, all my parents wanted me to do was get through school, go to college, and then it was like, that's it. That's the only.
It was sort of the opposite for me. Yeah, I feel like I had a very strong backbone, maybe I would probably say a bit too rigid backbone, which and structure that I sort of have to break out of in many ways.
Yeah.
As you discover that, there's this moment where you discover that the framework you were brought up in just doesn't encompass all of reality, and that you need to sort of expand it or break some aspects of it to get to a larger world. So that's more of my experiences. This growth of perspective and this coming out of this, maybe, yeah, I'm not sure if that maps onto
Well, yeah,
your experience is different.
it's different, but it's also similar, and that I didn't know that there was a different way, like that you can like set a standard for yourself on how you want to live and what's important to you and what or yeah, your values, what it means to be a good person. And I mean, I'm probably not giving my parents enough credit, because I think my mom, I well, I think I learned a lot, like some things naturally, just kind of intuitively. I had a loving mom, and I think she's a decent person and a good person, a great person in a lot of respects. But yeah, I don't know. I've only recently like encountered people who are religious and the way that they live their lives, and the way that that's so beneficial in so many ways. So it's also a breaking out of a worldview, even though it was so kind of still.
Yeah, it's like it's interesting. Yeah, well, in a sense, the get through school, go to college, get married thing is a sort of a narrative in itself, where it's like the only thing that really matters is getting a good job and finding a family and settling down and becoming this middle class citizen who pays his taxes and
Yeah.
a good way to society. Maybe that's part of it, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think so much of my parents really enjoy life, and I think that, like, I learned that was kind of a goal. Like, your goal is just to enjoy yourself and kind of like set up life so that you can have fun and be with your friends, drink, that kind of thing. And I don't think that was the healthiest.
Yeah.
Orientation.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of very different from my own upbringing, where I haven't really thought about this, how I would distinguish I guess what matters much more to my own parents is living in a way that's pleasing to God, something like that. So that's sort of very different, and yet still finding joy in that, I guess.
Right. See, I think I'm learning now that that's so much better. Like, that is much more in line. I want to live, and just barely beginning that journey, it already feels so much better than just chasing these little highs, that never linger, and they're just kind of transient experience.
Yeah, that's not hard to believe. Yeah.
You're gonna recreate some magical little social happiness that I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I thought you said your parents were Catholic, or like, what was your upbringing like? Where do you come from?
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. So I was born and raised in Southern California, and my parents got divorced when I was 4.5. Uh,
Mm,
and yeah, when they got divorced, my mom immediately moved with me and my sister to 2.5 hours away from my dad, to where her job was in Los Angeles, and was immediately seeing someone new who ultimately became my stepdad. And so he's kind of
mm,
most as my dad, my parent. And I kind of lost touch with my biological father over the years. And I'm just now like kind of piecing together what a big impact it must have had on a 4.5-year-old to leave the
ah.
person that was her dad, you know?
Yeah, I hear like some of your most formative times of your life is like between up, up to the age of 4 or 5 is
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. So I think my biological father had a huge impact on like shaping that young kid, but then I lost that touch with him and then was raised by this person who was really, really different from my dad. Like my dad
Mm,
was this kind of more of a soft, sensitive, like pushover type dad, really. And
mm,
then my stepdad is this insanely kind of strict disciplinarian, harsh.
mm,
So that I think was really difficult. But so
mm.
my mom and my stepdad were not really religious in any sense. At least they didn't raise us with any idea of um, yeah, what it would mean.
Yeah, God, or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But well, okay. So my mom's mom was a very devout Catholic, my grandma, and it was important to her, I think, that me and my sister were baptized and had our first communion and that stuff. And so we did those things. It's so striking to me how little memory or impact those experiences had on me. Like I don't even remember learning anything about what it meant.
Hmm.
And like I think
Wow.
I got like some shoddy catechism classes from this babysitter that we had, and like
And you hardly remember any of it.
yeah, like, which is strange. And that's another thing. Like my memories, I feel like about growing up are kind of, I feel like I don't have a clear picture of it, and I don't know if that's normal or if because I've kind of had this undercurrent of anxiety throughout my whole upbringing, if I kind of don't have fully formed memories because of that. I don't know.
Uh, have you ever had like someone to talk to about like what your childhood was like?
No.
Um, yeah, that's
Done that.
it's interesting because I wonder if this has any impact on how I remember my childhood. But like, I have this group of friends who one of our favorite activities is just to get together and reminisce or tell stories about the ridiculous things we did when we were like 5 to the age of 12.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like doing that over the years, I sort of developed this collective memory
Yeah.
of of essentially folklore,
Yeah.
because the stories, like there's these funny stories we'll tell over and over again, and they just get stretched out over time.
Mhm.
And and so I have like this mythic past
Yeah.
of but
Yeah.
it's I don't know if many people have that experience, but it just gives me a better sense of where I came from in
Right.
my past, I guess. But that's
Yeah.
interesting.
That seems like a nice thing. Yeah. I haven't really. Yeah. It feels honestly like, uh, and like in college, I started trying to kind of write about my experience,
Hmm.
particularly about the relationship with my stepdad, which has been a kind of real challenge over the years and shaped me in a lot of ways. And
Yeah, yeah.
like I wrote. metaphorically, it feels like I've just been running through my life and it's raining and I've kind of had my hands up, just like running kind of. And then like, I feel like I'm only just getting to the place where I'm like, you can stop. You don't have to run and protect yourself from what's going on around you. You can look back and kind of, you're at enough of a distance where those things aren't going to hurt you anymore. And kind of with Ben unpacking all of the challenges. Like, trauma sounds like a big word, and like, but I think in some ways it was traumatic, just because my stepdad was like very verbally abusive, I guess. Yeah, like his mood was unpredictable, and if you did something wrong or like pissed him off, he would yell at you and get in trouble. So, and also a wrinkle to my parents is I would now say I think of them both as alcoholics. Like functioning well alcoholics. They both have normal, or had, my mom is retired now, but they were, working full time, normal people, but they also drank a lot. And I feel like a lot of their life revolved around drinking and partying with friends. And I actually started drinking at a really young age because my stepdad, and so another interesting wrinkle is that my stepdad is like 18 years younger than my mom. So, when he came into the picture when I was 4.5, he was in his early 20s, which is a young age to take on parenting of 2 girls. And, so anyway, yeah, I started drinking at a young age because my parents were like, drinking is okay. Like, and almost wanted to introduce me to alcohol at a young age because they had this mentality that, oh, if you're drinking under our roof, like that's better than you going out with your friends. And but it just became really unhealthy. And like drinking with my stepdad, that came to be like a defining aspect of our relationship, which is not normal, I don't think, at all. Like doing shots with your stepdad. And like,
I mean,
he and I would just hang out together and drink, like just the 2 of us. And yeah, so that's all weirdness. I don't know where I was going with this, but
yeah, I mean, like one part of my relationship with my dad is he makes wine, and then we have this like my brothers and I will like help him bottle the wine, and then we'll taste the wine and these types of things. Like, I don't know what you mean when you say drinking with your dad, but
imagine drinking, like alcoholic level drinking, where it's and it's about partying. Like, it's like there's music on, like we're hanging out, like pouring every so often, drinking beer, relating really as peers, not as daughter. But then how that created issues, because then I'd be drinking, so I'd be getting drunk, and then I would do something that he wouldn't like, and he would tap into parent mode, and be like, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, we would just get into arguments that would blow up because we were both drinking, and that was just a cycle that we were in for a long time.
I see. Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I went away to college, and that was my first little taste of real independence. And I was drinking a lot in school because
what was your major?
Yeah, it was journalism. Yes, I was editor of the college paper, all very my journalism stuff.
What was the journal called?
What?
What is the journal called?
The newspaper? It was called The Orion.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, like, what kinds of things do you publish there? Like, just articles, on anything, or like news, or?
Yeah, it was the campus newspaper. So whatever the news that would be relevant to students was, and there was a news section, a sports section, a futures section.
Okay, yeah.
Just like kind of like a classic newspaper. And yeah, that was a great experience. I was very into my experience on the newspaper and very not into my classes outside of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, apart from my journalism classes, I excelled in the journalism classes, but I just wouldn't go to class if I didn't feel like it was relevant to me personally, or that I was learning.
Mhm.
Not what I wanted to be doing. And yeah, I had no real sense of duty about school. I just
Yeah, yeah.
going, fail out. And I actually didn't ultimately graduate from college. I'm like a few classes shy because I felt like I had gotten everything that I wanted to get from the experience. I just wanted to complete the other classes, and I was also like struggling with mental health, so it just
Oh, what is that like? If
uh,
that's not
yeah,
too person.
I struggled with anxiety a lot. I think because of how my relationship with my stepdad, I just have this fear of getting in trouble all the time, like
Mm,
very
mm.
vigilant relationship to the world, where I'm like scanning, like, is this situation okay, trying to think ahead to what people are doing, and if
What people are thinking about you, probably, maybe.
yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too.
Not good.
Oh no, it's like I've noticed when, sorry, I'm getting a bit on a personal tangent, but
Oh yeah.
like one thing I've noticed for myself is like I'll be with someone else and there'll be a third person, and then I'll sort of notice how the other person is reacting to the third person, and then I'll sort of mirror what the second person is doing, or sort of not give my authentic, not be my authentic self, but sort of mirror the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of one thing I've noticed where I'm sort of afraid. For example, if the second person was critical of the third person, I would be much more yeah, I'd be a bit scared of sort of, yeah, you
Like
probably know what I mean.
differentiate yourself from whatever that thing
It,
was.
it, it or I'll sort of internalize the voice of the second person and sort of see the world through his
Oh,
eyes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's probably a better way of putting it.
yeah.
Where
That
I'll
makes
hear this critical second voice in my head.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I am still figuring out I'm still becoming aware of the ways that my mind works when it comes to this stuff. Like the other day, Ben pointed out, like we were having a conversation, and then all of a sudden I apparently just like had this kind of look on my face and was kind of started pacing and like thinking in my own head. And
Mhm.
he's like, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not,
Yeah, wow.
and he's like, what are you thinking about? He's like, it seems like you're having some sort of intrusive thoughts that you're caught up in. And I was like, I'm not having intrusive thoughts, like what? And and then when I actually thought about what I was thinking about, it was like we were discussing this book that I've read and he's read part of, and he was like, oh, we should pick that back up and go over it. And I realized that there was something in the book that he was right about, that I had long maintained like isn't true. And so I knew that when he read the book, he was going to be like, oh, see, I was right about this. And so
Ah,
I was thinking in my head, without even realizing it, because I was so identified with the thought, like, how am I going to handle when he reads the thing and knows right and I was wrong? Like, do I get ahead of that and be like, you you were right about the thing, or like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow.
I have so many issues, but I really hate being wrong,
Mm.
which is so weird.
That is weird because like you're a very open-minded person. Um, it's weird how that works.
Yeah, like so many of these things about myself that I have to work on, I was really in denial of because because I'm like, but I'm so uncertain about everything, and I'm always asking questions and open to hearing from other people. But, and that's true, but
Maybe you don't like packaged truths or packaged certainties or like here is the way things are. That's
yeah. And I don't like being told from someone else, because this has happened a lot where Ben will tell me things that I eventually find out were like really true and accurate and on point. But at the time,
mhm.
because I didn't know it, I was just like, I don't know about that, or like, I don't think that that's true.
Or well, maybe this, I don't know if this is like me or the other person, but I've noticed also um so much so many of things that are true are like this is true, but the opposite is also true at the same time. And then I will recognize this, and at different times in my life, I'll emphasize one of those dualities. Like,
Mm,
and then someone will come and give me a strong case for the opposite, and I'll be like, oh, but what about this? And
yeah.
then I won't be able to stand the fact that the other person is so adamant about the opposite because I realize that both are true at the same time, though at different at it. I know it at a different point in my life, or like just a few days ago, I would have been emphasizing this opposite end as well. So it's yeah, it's just this double standard also.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have a habit of, if Ben is talking about, yeah, one aspect of an issue, I get mad that he's just talking about that aspect. I'll be like,
Yep.
you need to also say that, like, you have to say these things side by side. Otherwise, I don't know that you know the other thing, and that
Oh
you're
yeah.
in, and that like that's part of your. And he's just like, you should trust me that I've acknowledged in a more general sense that I
Yep.
think that's true. I don't need to say it every time. I'm like,
This is big. This is big when it comes to discussing politics, especially, I think.
yes, that's where.
Yeah. But yeah, that always gets me. Where like someone will be just this left right thing. Someone will be saying something from a right wing perspective, and I'll be like, but the left wing people have a point here and here, and you're just saying the opposite of that. And then I'll be like emphasizing the left wing side. I think I get triggered more by the right wing side at this point in my life because I don't see the left wing side addressed as much. But I think I'm in some ways I'm a natural contrarian, but in other ways I like to conform.
Yeah. Yeah. I get really upset about anyone trying to put me in a box or like label my perspective.
But I love labeling other people's perspective.
Yeah, I don't know if I do that. I'm sure I do. I like to tell myself that I try not to put people in boxes, but yeah, I just
It's yeah. Yeah, I like to tell myself I don't like to put people in boxes, but I find it really helpful to get a gestalt sense of the other person,
yeah,
um, which can be very, very, very distorting if you
yeah.
don't watch
I
out.
get so mad when, because I think, like when Ben and I met, I was coming to the politics discussions from more of a liberal kind of progressive perspective. But I felt very much that I was not like a typical liberal progressive that was that
Mm.
blind. Like I felt I had a more nuanced and complex view of things. However, well, yeah, I don't think I had as much nuance and perspective as I thought. But I would get so mad when Ben would lump me in kind of with this idea of people like you, people from your perspective think. And I'm
Yeah,
like, what are
yeah,
you talking about? Me? Yeah.
yeah. That's probably also his fault. I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So we are getting back to like to your story. You were in college and you were um not going to all of your classes. You were
Yeah.
struggling with anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, what
Yeah.
were your relationships like, if that's not too personal a question?
Let's see. The first couple years of college were just kind of an all over the place mess. Like my life revolved around going out with the people I lived with in the dorms, and I had boyfriends here and there. It was just kind of nothing really meaningful, I would say. I struggled a lot to make friends.
Hmm.
My freshman year in college, I have journals from that time that are really interesting. Like where I'm like, I just feel like people here aren't like me, and I don't relate. Like people are looking for meaningful connections, and I think a lot of that is just kind of this story that I tell myself about myself, but also there's an element of it. I don't know. I can't figure out what the element is that might be true, that I'm maybe different. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah. Then when was it? I guess my sophomore year in college is when I got more involved in the journalism stuff and joined the newspaper at like a low ranking level and made friends there. Yeah, moved my way up, met someone who became my boyfriend, and he and I were together for 6 years. So that was
Wow.
the that became the backbone of my life, I guess, and kind of that relationship was the thing that gave me some security that I didn't have, or it was like, yeah, it was like, a very safe and secure place coming out of my turbulent upbringing. Kind of,
Mhm.
yeah, it was a really meaningful and lovely relationship, and that person's still one of my best friends today. But we also, I think the reason why, or one of the reasons, a big reason why we did so well is because I think we're really similar, and I think we have a lot of similar issues that we didn't challenge each other to grow. We just kind of allowed each other to be. So we both had issues with drinking. We both were pretty anxious, self-conscious type people, introverted, I guess intellectual-ish, like liked discussing philosophy and journalism and things like that. Yeah, so that relationship was great, but I just, yeah, and I don't know. I still haven't fully made sense of my college experience.
That or
Yeah,
mm.
I, let's see, what happened? I, yeah, eventually got to the point where I was going to fail out of college, basically, because I wasn't going to class. But I also had really good jobs. Like, had the newspaper thing where I was the editor of the paper. That was great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
After that, I worked for the university's public affairs and publications department as a editorial assistant. So I was also writing and editing and working on publications. So I've always had this, I think, the thing that has, I don't want to say saved me, but has been a sense of, provided a sense of purpose.
Security, yeah.
Yeah, has been my love of reading and writing. And I always kind of felt I excelled as a writer. Like that was the one thing in school that was kind of highlighted for me as like, you're good at this. And that's why I studied journalism, because I just knew that I wanted to write, and that seemed like a practical way to do that and potentially make money doing it. And yeah, so these jobs were all kind of tied into that, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of them. but also I was just a crazy perfectionist, and
Yeah.
like I think I'm also extremely lazy, and I think because I was really good in school as a young kid. I think things came naturally to me, school came naturally to me, and then when I got older, where I couldn't get by just on my natural abilities and kind of had to do homework and put in the work, I just I didn't grow up. I think my stepdad tried, and so this has been an interesting thing lately, my stepdad's criticisms of me I couldn't hear because of the way that they were presented and kind of the difficulties in our relationship, but I think there was a lot of truth in them that I now see. Just he wasn't able to communicate them in a way that would have been effective for a young person to hear, like, because I think it was really lazy and undisciplined and childish and selfish, all of these things. But when you're just telling and yelling at a little girl that like, great.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe the trust thing there is like what's missing. Is that a big part of it? Like he's not able to communicate that because you don't trust him in a deep sense. Was that
I think so. Yeah. That whole piece I'm still just barely scratching the surface of, I think.
Feels like the past is sort of this foggy place where these sort of shapes shifting in and out of focus, and then something pops out sometimes, and sometimes something from the past comes and pokes you in the back. But it's very scary, foggy, chaotic place.
And I think I need to write about it more, because every day I'm just unlocking new little pieces of it. Another, like, a thing that happened today is another thing about my upbringing is my sister, who's 2 years older than me, has a cranial facial disorder. So she looks very different from people, and her face is kind of, I don't know, I don't like any of the words that people use, like deformed or disfigured.
I can look it up.
She looks differently than the average person. And I think that affected me in weird ways, where I think, like, from a very early age, I was both, like, this is so, like, terrible to say, but I think I felt like I was better than her. You know what I mean? And I never would have said that before today, but I think, I don't know, yeah. And also it's made me very concerned with social rejection, because I saw from an early age how people treated her, and which is also a tricky thing, because it was like, even though I was very defensive and caring toward my sister, there was also an element of how does her being my sister reflect on me, and kind of, that was a challenging thing. So and I think my biological father, there are valid reasons for why my mom they got a divorce, and I think he treated me better than my sister because of her issues. I think he had a hard time accepting her issues. I think I was, in a sense, treated like I was the better daughter, and I didn't do anything to earn that. It just was because I didn't have her challenges. And so I think that is where some of my
that could be.
Constantly comparing myself to other people, and have a very, if I'm not the best, then I'm only interested in being the best. You know? So then talking this through is like, well, do you think you're better than other people? And I'm like, of course not. Like, I don't think I'm better than anyone. But isn't that kind of what you're saying? If you're
That's what you'd say. Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah. So anyway, there's a lot going on there.
Goodness. Is that another thing that comes to mind when you're describing this is sort of how does that like the fact that you feel that your parents like loved one child more than the other, like does that impact how you have love in any way for you, like how others love you or how you love others? Is that in
Yeah,
any way
I'm sure
hard
it
to
does.
say?
And I just, because it's gonna make me feel better to say, I don't think that was the case with my mom at all.
Hmm.
Just, I think my biological father and I think my stepdad too, in ways I definitely was like, because my sister, because of, I think in some ways because of her medical issues, and also just because we both had issues with discipline and laziness, but she had a harder time in school. She had a harder time um, just kind of keeping up with chores and things. And so my stepdad was, I also feel like he treated me like I was the good daughter, you know, the one who always had some sort of, she was really challenging, you know. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure that it does affect love for me, and I still haven't gotten to the bottom of that. I think I have a deep fear of being rejected by people for who I am. Like, I'm so afraid of showing my real self to people. I'm coming out of this now, but yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
same here. I wonder if, yeah, when I think about that whole thing in myself, I wonder where that comes from. Is it like, does it come from like feeling that your interests aren't being appreciated by other people, especially your family?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was that part of your experience? Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, in a sense, I just don't feel like my parents gave me a lot of attention. Like, I don't think their lives revolved around engaging with us in a, like, I don't know, like they took care of us and they made sure we were doing the right things. And, but I don't remember them ever like inquiring about my interests or like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fostering
Yeah.
interests in any way, or I would get praised for success in school. That was like the
Oh
thing.
yeah, yeah. I can relate to that. It was like, for me, it was like, um, I maybe this was just me projecting, maybe not. It's still these foggy shapes in the background, but there was the sense that like the things I was interested in weren't appreciated, were almost the opposite of appreciated. Hardly ever got talked about. Like you said, like if I got a good report card, they would like it almost seemed like they thought it was their duty to just say something, so they said something. But there, I never felt like there was a lot of genuine interest. But yeah, part of this could also be just who my parents are. Like some people are just a lot less comfortable communicating emotionally, so that might have been a part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that helps me think about my own situation. You know.
Yeah. What were your interests growing up?
Oh, I would say around high school, I got a lot more interested in philosophy and theology, and
Mm.
yeah, that coming from a sort of conservative background, like there's a lot of fideism. So it's yeah, there's a lot of in some cases there's this sort of aversion to higher education.
Mm-hmm.
So that type of thing was something I am sort of still struggling with to some degree. Yeah, which I get. I mean I sort of get it. I mean, reading Kierkegaard has made me more comfortable with that perspective, but I don't agree with it. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the dark sides, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's there's this German saying, "Je gelehrter, je verkehrter," which is which is like the um, something the intellectual class of the Hutterites are always bashing on
Oh,
about.
that's
It,
so
it,
fun.
it roughly translates to the more educated they are, the more off the well-beaten track you are, in a
Wow.
sense. So like the more educated you are, the more lost you are, essentially. So it's like something we're all.
I feel like I've had a weird, because I don't feel very educated because I didn't take school seriously and just went to a state college, and yeah, wasn't studious. And so I feel like I have a weird chip on my shoulder about like liking not being very educated. But it's like I don't know where I actually fall on the spectrum of educated or not. But I like, and maybe I just use this as a defense mechanism, being like, I'm not intellectual or I don't know a lot of things, and I like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I also have a similar thing when it comes to writers. I feel like where I don't
Oh,
like when people are like I'm just fine reading trashy novels or what people consider low culture or whatever. Like I'm into it.
that okay. That's interesting.
But also high, and also I think I read things that are considered
Really good.
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Probably I'm sure there's just some sense of insecurity tied up in there, and but also I do feel like if I become the writer I want to be, I want to write things that are accessible to to anyone. I don't want it to be some sort of, even though it can have sophisticated ideas embedded in it, I want it to be something that people can understand. And like clear communication to me is a challenge and a goal. And as long as the story is moving and people connect with it, I think that's more important than. But also not to crap on stuff that requires more effort to access. It's just when I think about my career and what I'd want to do, I would want it to be very accessible.
Yeah. How do you feel about people who do you feel any sort of self-consciousness or about announcing yourself as a writer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in public.
Yeah. Yeah, I've only recently started to kind of do that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit online.
Yeah. And I do think it's like there's both the thing of call yourself what you are. Like if you're an artist, you don't need anyone's approval to call yourself that if you make art. That's what I think. But I think it's also, and if you have a sincerity about not like your artistic effort. But I also think I try to keep in mind that like there's this phrase that I heard that was like, don't be the poet, live the poem, or something like that, where like don't get fixated on the idea of being a writer, just do it, just write and do what you do, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, labeling myself a writer. I've started to do that recently, but I'm like, what does that mean? I'd probably be better off just saying, I'm Kacey and I write sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I feel really self-conscious about sort of announcing myself as an intellectual. Like, I can't even say that without putting it in square quotes.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's also
so I don't know.
like,
A part of it is just because of, you sometimes see these very self-important people who, I'm an intellectual and I wear a fedora and I say sophisticated things and I read sophisticated books and I have sophisticated thoughts and sophisticated friends. Ugh.
yeah, yeah. It's a funny line to walk with stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's between like authentic, being authentic and being annoying. You know?
Yeah, and it's like humility. If you were like to be really humble,
Yeah, it's humility.
acknowledging it doesn't mean you deny what you are, what you do, you know?
I think I'd much rather fall um, into the extreme of denying who I am, at least publicly, than I am in falling into the extreme of being authentic and risking the whole lack of humility thing. So yeah, until I find out that balance, I'll be trying to fall into the humility end of the extreme.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like Ben has opened my eyes more to how sometimes not wanting to say
Mm-hmm.
what you are is more prideful than, or I don't know, or more,
Oh, let me think about that.
what's the word? Ego, like,
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
oh yeah, I see it. It's like you normal people are too beneath me to bother engaging at this depth of who I actually am level,
Yeah.
or you ignorant fedora wearing people who think you're smarter than everyone else. I'm really the smart one because I'm not out there advertising myself. So yeah, there's a whole lot of
I don't know. Or just
potentially wrapped up
I
in
don't know.
that.
I don't know. I forget. There was some little wrinkle he had on it that was, I was like,
I think there is a big humility in being able to be yourself with anybody. That requires humility big time, I think, too.
that's where I'm trying to get, Julian. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's all I want is to be able to feel comfortably myself with anyone and to be the person I am in my head. Well, the good parts outwardly. And I just have a lot of weird crap to get through to let those walls down and let myself show, because it's like this weird thing where all I want to do is to be seen by people, and I never put myself in the position to be seen by people, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't put myself out there. I don't cultivate relationships. I literally don't speak a lot. Like in work
Oh
meetings,
yeah,
I'm just the quiet one.
I often I often find myself thinking I spoke a lot that day, but then realizing most of it was inside my head or the books I read or the podcasts I listened to.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be at the end of the year, I'm kind of tired today. I must have talked a lot. Then you actually, you know, I've hardly talked with anyone today.
I talk to myself a lot.
Yeah, this is just the phase I'm in right now.
But yeah. Yeah.
I think we should have a challenge between us to every day venture out of ourselves to a different person in
Yeah.
some way.
Okay, let's do it.
Starting next week.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Next week sounds good. Put it on. Yeah. Well, it was last night we went over to Joey's because he had a little happy hour gathering. Do you know about the thing that he does?
Oh, Joyce Barron called.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And we just haven't been out of the house in a while because Ben and I have just been dealing with all of our issues every day. And we also quit drinking a few months ago. So I think for both of us, but in particular, I'll just speak for myself. For me, drinking was a huge social crutch where if I have a drink in my hand, I feel a lot more comfortable. It actually does help with anxiety, like more less inhibited. And so I'm having to relearn how to be social without that. And yesterday,
how did that go actually?
It was difficult, I guess. I felt like I would have been more comfortable if I were drinking, and I was like, oh man, if I could just have a beer and settle into this relating to people, I'd probably be a little more outgoing and like initiate conversation rather than I'm just kind of sitting there like. But I also like we did talk to people and it was fine, and I think it's just really necessary that I figure out how to be a person in the world without alcohol. And I think
totally.
I tell a lot of stories about myself, like because I'm quieter, I get really self-conscious about that when I'm in group settings. Like I'm like, oh, everyone's like, why is she so quiet? Is she either dull or is she stuck up or
oh yeah,
whatever.
which isn't true, I don't think.
Yeah.
If you're like extremely quiet and won't say like a single word all evening, people will start to think those things. But if you don't, I think if you're just like not very outgoing, people will think you're a bit more interesting.
Yeah.
More than anything.
I'm trying to realize that my perspective is warped on that. And also that I'm probably not as shy as I tell myself that I am.
Yeah. It's really weird with me because I'm actually a pretty outgoing person, but I've found myself becoming an introvert as I've gotten more interested in the stuff happening inside my own head. I just have a harder time relating to people, harder time just having trivial conversations, which I think actually is important. You need to have trivial conversations. Yeah. I mean, a while back I was going somewhere, and the way out, my mom said, Julian, try to just talk to people about the stuff they want to talk about at a normal level. And I thought, yeah, Mom, you get it.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah. I've always had this thing of like, I hate small talk. I can't talk to people because I don't like surface level conversations. Like I just want to either we're having a deep conversation or I don't know how to do that. But I think I have to not write people off. I don't know. Like there's so much you can get out of every kind of interaction if you're bringing all right. I don't know.
Oh yeah. I often wonder about the balance between being okay with just trivial conversations, like we have communal dinner every day, like 3 meals a day, and what I try to do is just talk with the people in front of me, no matter about what. And sometimes we talk about the weather, sometimes we talk about hurricanes, occasionally we have a kind of deep conversation very occasionally.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just talk about what we're having for dinner, but
Yeah.
it's something. And I think it's better than just sitting there and thinking about the interesting stuff inside my own head. So
Yeah, I think I really need to work on that because we would like at my work we have monthly staff meetings where we all have lunch in the same room, and everyone is like talking to the people next to them, chatting, being normal humans, and I'm just always like by my like sitting just to myself, and I'm like I'm the only person in this room who's not talking to someone. Something's probably wrong with me.
oh yeah, I get that too. Like there's every day we have coffee break at the at the manufacturing shop, and I'm always like I it's this weird sensation of sitting in the room and you can't pick out a single conversation. You just hear the noise of the whole thing. You
Yeah,
know that?
yeah,
That's how I feel like so often.
yeah.
And yeah, I think I'll just have to sit down next to someone and start to talk. But yeah.
Flew into one of those little worlds happening. Yeah. I think I'm entering this phase of coming back out into the world. Like, I think I had to do this big retreat into myself to figure out a lot of stuff. And now, slowly opening back up.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the stuff happening inside of my head that makes me want to come outside of my head. So maybe it maybe it does lead out of itself at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? Ben and I are in an interesting place because we don't really know what's next for us. We're both going through career job transitions.
Oh,
And
what do you actually do?
I work for a public radio station here, so the NPR member station, as
Mm.
a producer, a digital producer. So I help produce stories for our website and run social media and stuff like that. But I put in my notice and I'm leaving that job at the end of this month, and I don't know what I'm doing next. So
Ah.
question mark. And Ben is also changing his relationship to his work. He works remotely for a company in London, but he's not going to be working with them in a full-time capacity anymore. So we're both kind of, well,
Ah.
we both found aspects of our job to be extremely kind of soul-crushing and not.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
My job is like a daily news grind tied to, you know, the daily news and in front of a screen all day, and
Ah, yeah.
just not fulfilling to me. I felt very disconnected from the mission and the impact that I felt like the work I was doing was having on real people. And anyway, just decided I needed to leave. So we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Us in a couple of weeks because we have no idea what we're going to be doing.
Are you looking around for something else or?
Yeah, kind of. I've applied for a few remote digital news jobs just to bridge the gap in a sense. But yeah, basically, I want more flexibility, maybe like only work part time, and I'd like to work remotely until we figure out what we want our life to look like in a bigger sense. Yeah, because we're going through so much spiritual growth right now that I want that to be the priority. And I want to figure out how I want to live that is like aligned with my soul's purpose. So
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, I mean, I don't find my job that meaningful all of the time,
yeah,
or most of the time, but I often think that's sort of more my problem than the problem with my job itself. So I'm sort of trying to, because I see people around me like finding their job incredibly meaningful. So what I'm trying to do is sort of I don't think I'm actively trying to do this, but what I want to work towards is getting more engaged so that it becomes part of my identity and something I value and something I find meaning in and something that I can wake up in the morning and look forward to
Yeah,
instead of the opposite.
yeah,
Um,
that would be ideal, huh?
yeah, just finding something within myself instead of trying to change the objective circumstances is,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's, yeah. I was going back and forth about that too. Like, is this just more of a problem with me and my not wanting to?
Hmm.
I don't have any sense of duty or obligation, and I can't shift my attitude enough to find meaning in this. But, and I think in some respects, yes, but also,
Yep, yep.
uh, yeah, I have to trust my gut on things like this. Uh, I just,
Yeah, it's a tricky balance there. It's yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, good. Best of luck with that for sure. Um, yeah, I actually have to run about. I'm almost out of time, so we should split.
Yes.
But this has been good.
Yeah,
We,
great chatting. Thanks
yeah,
for,
we should do it again.
yeah, yeah, I feel like there's endless amounts of things to talk about.
Yeah, they just get opened up
Yeah,
more and more as we continue.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we haven't even gotten to your piece and um, to all kinds of other stuff. So,
yeah, definitely. Let's do it again.
yeah, okay.
All
Great
right,
talking, Kacey.
you too. Take care.
You too.